Imagine this: a peaceful family outing at the park, filled with laughter and joy, suddenly takes a dark turn. A stranger approaches a woman with a harsh glare and bitter words. Without warning, she hurls cruel insults at the family, her tone dripping with prejudice. The black family, stunned but composed, tries to defuse the situation, but her tirade only escalates. Onlookers freeze, unsure whether to step in or walk away. The tension in the air is palpable. Just when it seems the woman's hateful words might go unchecked, something unexpected happens. Karma makes a swift and dramatic entrance, catching everyone, including the woman, completely off guard. This is a story of how hate collided with justice in the most surprising way. Stay tuned, because you won't believe how the tables turn and the lesson she learns in mere moments. It all started on a crisp Saturday afternoon. The Johnson family was enjoying a much-needed day outdoors. The kids were playing on the swings, their laughter echoing through the park, while their parents relaxed on a nearby bench, chatting and occasionally calling out words of encouragement. It was one of those moments that felt almost too perfect a snapshot of happiness. But happiness has a way of drawing unwanted attention. Across the park, a woman sat alone, her sharp eyes darting toward the Johnsons. At first, no one noticed her, but as the family continued their carefree afternoon, she grew visibly agitated. Her muttering became louder, catching the attention of a few passers-by who exchanged uneasy glances but said nothing. Without warning, she stood and began marching toward the family. Her heels clicked aggressively on the pavement, a sound that might have been mistaken for determination if not for the scowl etched on her face. When she reached them, she didn't hesitate. Her voice, cold and cutting, shattered the peace. "You people don't belong here," she snapped, loud enough for others nearby to hear. Her words were dripping with contempt, her gaze fixed on the parents. "Taking over spaces that aren't yours, don't you have your own places to be?" The mother, startled but calm, looked up. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice steady despite the insult. "You heard me," the woman spat, crossing her arms. "This park used to be quiet, peaceful. Now look at it. You people ruin everything." The father, sensing the tension rising, gently stepped between his wife and the woman. "Ma'am, we're just here with our kids like everyone else. There's no need for this." But his attempt to defuse the situation only seemed to fuel her anger. "Don't talk down to me," she snapped. "You think you're so special, don't you? Parading around like you own the place." By now, a small crowd had begun to form. Parents paused their conversations, joggers slowed to a stop, and even the children on the playground seemed to sense the shift in the atmosphere. The Johnson kids, confused by the sudden commotion, ran back to their parents, clutching their hands tightly. The woman's tirade continued, each word more venomous than the last. She insulted their appearance, their background, their very existence. It was a display of pure hatred, and yet the Johnsons stood firm, refusing to sink to her level. The mother held her children close, whispering reassurances, while the father met the woman's glare with a calm resolve. Then, something changed. From the crowd, a voice cut through the tension. "That's enough," a man said, stepping forward. He was tall, with a quiet authority that made people listen. "Leave them alone." The woman turned on him, her rage now directed at a new target. "This has nothing to do with you," she hissed. "It has everything to do with me," he replied firmly. "And everyone else here. You're out of line." Others in the crowd began to murmur in agreement. A young woman pulled out her phone, recording the scene, while an elderly couple shook their heads in disapproval. The tension was palpable, the air heavy with unspoken questions. How far would this go? Would anyone else step in? The woman, realizing she was now the center of attention in a way she hadn't anticipated, faltered. Her anger gave way to defensiveness. "You don't understand," she said, her voice losing some of its edge. "People like them." "People like them?" The man interrupted, his tone incredulous. "What exactly do you mean by that?" She stammered, her confidence crumbling under the weight of his gaze and the judgment of the crowd. But before she could respond, the unexpected happened. A gust of wind caught her off balance, causing her to stumble backward. She flailed, trying to regain her footing, but her heel caught on a crack in the pavement, and she went down hard. There was a collective gasp as she hit the ground, her purse scattering its contents across the path. For a moment, no one moved. Then, in a twist that no one saw coming, the Johnson father stepped forward, extending a hand to help her up. The woman hesitated, her face a mix of embarrassment and confusion. She stared at his outstretched hand, as if trying to decide whether to accept it. The crowd watched in silence, the tension now mingled with a sense of awe at his gesture. But just as she reached for his hand, something else happened, something that would change the course of the day entirely. A young boy from the crowd, no older than 10, walked over and began gathering the scattered contents of her purse. He didn't say a word, just quietly returned her belongings to her. The woman's face softened, if only for a moment. She looked from the boy to the father, her expression unreadable. But then, just as quickly as the moment of vulnerability appeared, it was gone. She pushed herself to her feet, brushing off the father's help, and snatched her purse from the boy without a word of thanks. The crowd began to disperse, murmurs of disbelief and disappointment following her as she stormed away. But the story wasn't over, not yet. As the Johnsons collected themselves and tried to salvage what was left of their day, a police car pulled into the park. Someone had called them, and they were there to investigate. And that's where things took an even more unexpected turn. As the police car rolled into the park, a hushed silence fell over the lingering crowd. 2 officers stepped out, their faces calm but focused as they scanned the scene. The Johnsons stood together, their children holding tight to their parents' hands. The tension from earlier still lingered, and everyone seemed to wonder what would happen next. One of the officers approached the family, his tone professional yet kind. "We received a call about a disturbance here. Can you tell us what happened?" The father, ever composed, explained the situation clearly. He described the woman's behavior without embellishment, emphasizing their attempts to de-escalate the conflict. The officer nodded, taking notes while glancing occasionally toward the woman, who stood a short distance away, arms crossed defensively. The second officer approached her, asking for her version of events. She launched into a dramatic retelling, painting herself as the victim and accusing the Johnsons of provoking her. Her voice was loud enough for everyone to hear, but the crowd's murmurs of disagreement told another story. Several witnesses stepped forward, eager to set the record straight. "She's lying," one woman said firmly. "I saw the whole thing." She started yelling at them out of nowhere. "Yeah," added a young man, holding up his phone. "I've got it all on video if you need proof." The woman's confidence visibly wavered as the officers reviewed the footage. The video left little room for doubt. It showed her unprovoked tirade, the Johnsons' calm responses, and her eventual fall. The officers exchanged glances before one of them approached her again. "Ma'am," he said, his tone firm but measured, "based on the evidence and witness statements, it's clear that you were the aggressor in this situation. I need to ask you to leave the park immediately. If you refuse, we'll have to take further action." The woman opened her mouth to argue but stopped herself. The weight of the crowd's judgment, the officer's authority, and the undeniable video evidence left her with no choice. She muttered something under her breath, turned on her heel, and marched away, her earlier bravado replaced with visible humiliation. As the tension dissipated, the crowd began to disperse. Some people approached the Johnsons, offering words of support and apologizing for not stepping in sooner. The father thanked them graciously, assuring everyone that they bore no ill will. "We're just glad it's over," he said, though the weariness in his voice hinted at how deeply the incident had affected them. The officers, too, spoke kindly to the family before leaving. "We're sorry this happened," one of them said. "No one should have to deal with that. If you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out." With the ordeal seemingly behind them, the Johnsons decided to stay a little longer at the park, determined not to let the incident ruin their day. The kids, reassured by their parents' calm demeanor, soon returned to the playground, their laughter gradually filling the air again. But the story didn't end there. Later that evening, the young man who had recorded the incident uploaded the video to social media, hoping to raise awareness about the reality of everyday racism. The video quickly went viral, sparking a wave of outrage and discussion. Comments flooded in from people across the country, praising the Johnsons' composure and condemning the woman's behavior. "I hope she learns a lesson from this," one comment read. "Hate like that has no place in our world." The video also caught the attention of local news outlets, which ran stories highlighting the Johnsons' grace under pressure. Interviews with witnesses further emphasized the family's dignity and strength, turning them into unlikely symbols of resilience and hope. Meanwhile, the woman faced her own reckoning. Someone recognized her in the video and identified her as a manager at a nearby business. Her employer, upon seeing the footage, issued a public statement condemning her actions and confirming that she had been let go. The woman, now facing the consequences of her behavior, found herself at the center of a public backlash she hadn't anticipated. For the Johnsons, the days that followed were a whirlwind. They received messages of support from strangers, invitations to speak at community events, and even offers of help from local organizations. While they appreciated the outpouring of kindness, they were also mindful of the deeper issues the incident had highlighted. "This isn't just about us," the father said during an interview. "What happened that day is something many families face every day. We were lucky to have witnesses who stood up for us in a system that worked in our favor, but not everyone gets that. We need to do better as a society." His words resonated deeply, sparking conversations about systemic racism, allyship, and the importance of standing up against hate. Community leaders organized forums and workshops, using the incident as a catalyst for change. The park, once a quiet and unassuming place, became a symbol of progress and unity. Months later, the Johnsons returned to the park for another family outing. This time, the atmosphere was different. Neighbors greeted them warmly, children played together without a care, and the air buzzed with a sense of community. The memory of that difficult day lingered, but it had been transformed into something greater, a reminder of the power of kindness, resilience, and collective action. As the sun set and the family packed up to leave, the father looked out over the park, his heart full. "It's not perfect," he said, "but it's a start." And with that, they walked hand in hand, leaving behind not just a memory but a legacy of hope.